This is day 4 of my coding journey for Swift. If you want to see the Swift UI version, it should be up by now. So today, in day 4, I learned a lot about loops. Now, in simple terms, I would say loops are an operation that performs a simple task but consistently. Now, it'll keep doing that task forever unless you create a condition where it'll fail at some point. So the first loop I learned are for loops, and for loops are essentially one of the most commonly used loops in coding in general, right? But the way that Swift does it now is that you have to have some sort of list or some sort of data that you're going through one by one in order for you to do some sort of task or computation, right? And this could be anything. I could put like, and it still work just fine. It's just a name that just helps it easier to convey what it is, because number is essentially the single item inside whatever list you have. So episode count is 1 through 1,000, and number is essentially every number between 1 and 1,000. So if I was to print out this statement, it says this episode number is 1 of One Piece. And it's going to keep doing that until it reaches 1,000. Now that's why I said before you have to create a condition so that way it fails at a certain point. And this one I did because I'm giving it a range. I could put it to 100, 10, 1, something that kind of aligns with whatever, I put it as for the range. I don't think I could put it as 1, but still, like, you get the point. Now I could also iterate through arrays as well. So for example, I did Drake's albums and then I put just 3 of them. Comment down below which one's your favorite album or if he is one of your favorite artists. But if you kind of notice, the way I'm naming these is essentially, if you have like a list of something, it has to be plural, and then whatever item you're looking within that list has to be like singular. So as you could see here, like I said before, you don't have to create a name, but you have to have some sort of underscore. But it's always good to have some sort of name so that way you could use it later on in your loop equation that you're creating the task for. Next up is while loops. Now while loops are kind of a little bit like for loops, except they need something off the rip, like, so you can't write it as for something in something else. It has to be created by a certain condition using the key term while at first. So for example, I put day, while day is less than or equal to 100, print out this task, and then this is the condition that's going to fail once when it reaches 99 or 100, right? Next up, we got a repeat loop. So this is kind of an interesting, since not many people or coders actually use this, but it still is considered something to learn, right? So what this is, repeat while, is basically saying do this first before checking the condition. So that's why I put in the comments, this goes first. It basically prints out the number and then does the operation and then checks the condition. So it just constantly repeats it until the condition is met. But you always got to have some sort of variable on the outside so that way you are able to stop the loop entirely. And also, if you notice, a warning symbol, because while false, that basically means that it's always going to be false. It's never going to be true. So it's never going to go inside these brackets. So it's like, why even have this code when it's never going to be executed? Which is why if you do like a repeat while false, it's going to print first and then, you know, get out of the loop and not do it again. Now, since I was talking about how loops should exit based off of the conditions met, there's also something you can do within the loop while you're performing the task, so that way you can stop at midway, right in the beginning, at the end, wherever you feel like it, but you have to have this key term called break. So you create the while loop with the condition, but then in the task operation, you do another sort of if statement or whatever you're trying to do it for. And if it reaches like at a certain point, you break out of it, and then it'll break out of the loop entirely. Now, exiting multiple loops. So from what I've noticed is that there's going to be certain times where there's going to be loops inside loops, and it could get kind of messy. So you're going to have to find ways to break out of loops entirely, because you can't just use break only because it's only going to break out of this one. It's going to keep going, but then it's like, oh, I want to see it out the entire operation. So you have to first give your for loop a name, the outer loop, and then you basically create a break and then give it like the name of like where you want to break at. I want to break outside of the outer loop. And then obviously skipping items in the list that you have it set for. So like imagine if I didn't want to look at a certain album in the list that I'm looking for, right? I'll just use this word, continue, and then based off of the condition being met, it'll just skip whatever this value is. So I put, if you're reading this is too late, views, and for all the dogs, it's gonna go through until it meets this condition, and then it'll just skip it and then it'll end. And then infinite loops, nobody really uses that because we don't want code to run forever. We want it to stop at certain points, check certain things, but I just created this so that way I knew it was actually possible, right?